All right, so you sent over this pretty hefty stack of info on XNSPY.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in. From kind of glancing through everything, it looks like you're really trying to figure out if this whole phone monitoring software thing is right for ya.
It's definitely a topic that's getting a lot of attention these days, and knowing what it can and can't do is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a pretty interesting mix of sources here. Some reviews from PC Mag. There's even a cybersecurity alert that caught my eye.
Oh, wow.
And we've got some user reviews, too.
Having all those different perspectives is so helpful.
Yeah.
Because it helps us go beyond just the technical stuff and see how people are actually using XNSPY.
Yeah.
In real life situations.
Exactly. It's like having a whole panel of experts with us right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so first things first, for anyone who might not be totally familiar.
Yeah.
What exactly is XNSPY?
So basically at its core, XNSPY is a mobile tracking application. It's made to keep an eye on what's happening on smartphones. Yep. And they market it for things like keeping tabs on your kids' online activity.
Right.
Or monitoring how employees are using company phones. But as we kind of dig into all this stuff, you'll see it's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, from the sources you sent, it seems like XNSPY claims to track a whole lot.
Yeah.
We're talking call logs, text messages, activity on all the social media platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram.
Oh, yeah, all the big ones.
Even GPS location, browsing history, photos, videos. They even say it can capture keystrokes. Is that even possible?
The list of features is pretty extensive. I mean, it can be really powerful. But there are some things you got to consider.
Yeah.
One of the biggest is the difference between the Android version and the iOS version.
So are you saying that someone using XNSPY to monitor an Android phone would get more information than someone monitoring an iPhone?
Potentially, yeah.
Interesting.
So the Android version, especially if the device is rooted.
Okay, hold on. Rooted.
Yeah.
For those of us who aren't exactly tech wizards, what does that even mean?
So rooting an Android phone is basically like unlocking its operating system.
Okay.
It gives you like deeper access to how it all works.
So it's like having admin privileges on a computer.
Exactly. You can do way more. But it also comes with some risks if you don't know what you're doing.
Gotcha. So if someone's like really tech savvy and they know how to root a phone, they can get even more monitoring capabilities with XNSPY on an Android.
Exactly. Features like recording the phone's surroundings, accessing WhatsApp, call logs, stuff like that usually needs a rooted device. But for iPhones, it's a different story.
So what's the catch with iPhones then?
A lot of XNSPY's features on iPhones depend on access to iCloud backups. So instead of seeing what's happening in real time, it relies on the data that's backed up to the cloud.
So if someone's not backing up their iPhone to iCloud regularly, XNSPY wouldn't be as effective.
That's right. And there's another kind of quirky thing with the iPhone version.
Okay, what's that?
If you try to enable location tracking, it actually sends a notification to the iCloud owner. So much for being stealthy, right?
Now, that seems like a pretty big design flaw if they're marketing this as a discrete monitoring tool.
Yeah.
So what about their claim that it's undetectable? Is that actually true?
Well, the PC Mag review mentioned that even though XNSPY doesn't have like a visible app icon, it does show up in the device's admin and usage access lists.
So someone who knows where to look could still find it.
Yeah, it definitely makes it less stealthy than they advertise.
Wouldn't that defeat the whole purpose?
It could. And keep in mind
that
XNSPY, like a lot of monitoring apps, is constantly uploading data in the background.
Right.
Which can drain the battery faster than usual. And that might make someone suspicious too.
So even if it's not immediately visible, there are still some signs that someone's phone is being monitored with XNSPY.
Exactly. And that's something to think about, especially if you're worried about maintaining trust and privacy.
For sure. Okay, so we've talked about the Android versus iPhone differences and how stealthy it really is. But the big question is, does it actually work as well as they claim? Some of these tech companies kind of overpromise and underdeliver.
Oh, totally. You're absolutely right. And that's where those user reviews we got are so valuable.
Yeah.
They give us a glimpse into how well XNSPY actually performs in real life.
Speaking of which, we've got this whole stack of user reviews.
Right.
And some of them sound pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Should we dive into those next?
Let's do it. It's time to hear what people who've actually used XNSPY have to say.
All right, let's do it.
So let's jump into these user reviews.
Yeah, let's see what people are actually saying.
And see what we can learn.
I'm really curious to see, after hearing about those potential issues with the iPhone version and that whole stealth thing.
Yeah, one of the first things that kind of jumped out at me is just how many different opinions there are.
Oh, really?
You've got some users who are like totally in love with the XNSPY.
Okay.
They're praising all the features and how it gives them peace of mind. They talk about being able to keep an eye on what their kids are doing online,
Right.
or making sure employees are actually using company devices for work and not goofing off.
So for some people, it's working just like it's supposed to.
Yeah, it seems like it.
That's good to hear. But I'm guessing those glowing reviews aren't the whole story.
Right.
What about the negative ones? What are people complaining about?
A lot of the negative feedback is about problems with how well it actually works,
Okay.
especially with the iPhone version.
Oh, yeah. We talked about how it depends on those iCloud backups.
Yeah, and it looks like that's causing some headaches for people.
Really?
They're saying that it's not always capturing texts and calls correctly, or that features like the keyloggers just aren't doing what they're supposed to.
Well, if you're paying that much money for software like this,
Yeah.
those kinds of glitches would be super annoying.
Yeah, especially if you're relying on it to keep track of something important.
Right.
And that frustration seems even worse because of how much it costs.
Yeah, that's true.
Remember, we're talking $149.99 a year for just one device.
Yeah, that's a lot.
A lot of users are like, that's just too much money if the software isn't even working right.
I found one review that said it doesn't update very often, and when it does, it's missing a bunch of texts and calls.
Oh, wow.
I'd be pretty upset if I were that person.
Yeah, totally. And, on top of that, the price.
Yeah.
Some of the reviews mentioned that it's kind of confusing how XNSPY does their pricing.
Really?
Like, it might even be misleading.
What do you mean?
It seems like some people thought they were paying for multiple devices,
Oh.
but then they found out later that it's only for one.
Oh, so you got to read the fine print.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's always a good reminder.
And if you're trying to monitor a bunch of kids or employees, that can get expensive really fast.
Yeah, for sure. But even if you only need to monitor one device, some people are still saying XNSPY just isn't worth the price tag.
Yeah, especially with those limits on real-time monitoring for iPhones.
Right, if you need to know what's happening right now. Relying on iCloud backups isn't exactly ideal.
Definitely not. One user even wrote, you can't even see calls until the next day.
Wow.
The logs aren't in real time.
That would be a total deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
Especially if I were a parent trying to keep an eye on my kid.
Right? If something happened, you don't want to find out hours later.
Exactly.
It seems like some people were really surprised by that. It just shows how important it is to do your research,
Yeah.
and really understand how the software works.
Right.
Especially those differences between the Android and iPhone versions before you spend any money.
All right, so we've talked about the functionality issues and the price and the whole real-time monitoring thing. But there's another side to all this that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unsettling.
Right.
You shared that cybersecurity alert with me
Yeah.
about XNSPY being used as what they called stalkerware.
Right.
What exactly does that even mean?
It's basically a term for software that's designed to track someone's activity without them knowing or agreeing to it.
So it could be used in, like, abusive situations.
Exactly, like
Yeah.
to keep tabs on a partner's every move, or read their messages, or track their location.
It's scary.
It is. And, a tool like XNSPY, even though it's marketed for legitimate reasons,
Right.
could definitely be misused in really harmful ways.
What did the cybersecurity alert say about that?
It pointed out some serious security weaknesses in XNSPY, which meant that data taken from people's phones could have been exposed.
Oh, wow. That's not good.
It's really worrisome because it means someone's private information like texts or location data or even photos
Yeah.
could be vulnerable to hackers or misused.
That's a scary thought.
It is.
It makes you realize that any software that collects that kind of sensitive information needs to have really strong security.
Absolutely. And it also raises some ethical questions, about how this technology is made and advertised and used. We need to be talking more about the potential for misuse and how to prevent harm.
So even though XNSPY is marketed to parents and employers, it's clear that it could also be used for more malicious purposes.
Right. It's like a double-edged sword.
Exactly.
And that's why using it responsibly and having some ethics around it is so important.
For sure.
We got to be mindful of the possible consequences and try to use technology like this for good.
Right, not for bad.
Exactly.
So we've looked at the good parts of XNSPY and the bad parts and even the kind of creepy parts.
Yeah. It's been quite a journey.
What's the overall takeaway? Is it a good tool, a bad tool, or somewhere in between?
It's tough to say. I think the answer is it depends. It's a complicated tool. It's got some powerful features,
Yeah.
but it also has limitations and risks and some ethical issues too.
So there's not really a simple yes or no answer.
Not really. It all comes down to what each person needs and what their values are.
It sounds like deciding whether or not to use XNSPY is really a personal choice.
Yeah, it's not just about the tech itself.
Right.
It's about how it fits into your life and the impact it could have on your relationships.
Okay, so for our listener who's been with us through this whole deep dive,
Right.
what are the key things they should be thinking about as they weigh their options?
That's a great question, and it's the perfect lead into our next segment,
Okay, perfect.
where we can focus on some practical advice and what this all means for our listeners' specific situation.
Okay, so we've really kind of dug into this whole XNSPY thing.
We've covered a lot.
We talked about all the features it has and the limitations and even the ethical stuff, like how it could be used for stock-in.
Right, right.
It's definitely a lot to think about.
It really is. And I think what makes this whole deep dive so interesting is that there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
XNSPY could be a great fit for one person and a total disaster for someone else.
Right. It really depends on your own needs and what you believe in.
Exactly.
It's not just about the tech, it's about how it affects your life and your relationships. So for our listener who's been with us through this whole thing, what are the most important things they should be thinking about as they're trying to decide what to do?
I think the first question anyone should ask themselves is why?
Why?
Yeah. Like, why are you even thinking about using monitoring software? What are you hoping to accomplish? Are you worried about your kids' safety online?
Yeah.
Or do you need to make sure your employees are using their work phones for work?
Right.
Or is there something else going on?
Figuring out your why is so important.
It really is.
Because it's going to affect every decision you make.
Exactly.
From what software you choose to how you actually use it.
It'll even help you figure out those ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, for sure, before you even download anything.
Right.
I think it's super important to think about the ethics of it all.
Oh, absolutely.
Ask yourself, is it ever okay to monitor someone without them knowing or agreeing to it?
Right. What are the risks to their privacy?
Yeah, those are tough questions, but you got to think about them. It's easy to get caught up in all the cool features.
Oh, yeah.
But we can't forget that this is about real people.
Right.
And their right to privacy.
Exactly. And that brings us to another key takeaway.
Okay, what's that?
Informed consent.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about monitoring your kid,
Yeah.
how are you going to talk to them about it?
That's a good question.
Do they understand why you're doing it?
Right.
Did they have any say in it? Those conversations can be hard.
Yeah.
But they're so important for building trust.
And even at work, if you're monitoring employees, being upfront about it is still really important.
It is. Employees need to know about the monitoring policies, why they're in place, and what data is being collected.
So it's about finding that balance between security and respecting people's rights.
Exactly. You nailed it.
All right. So let's say you've thought about all the ethical stuff and you've decided that monitoring is the right choice for you.
Okay.
What's next?
That's when the real research starts. Don't just pick the first app you see in an ad.
Right.
Look at the features, the price, and the user reviews. What are people actually saying about it?
Those reviews are so helpful.
They really are. And don't just assume that the most expensive option is the best.
Right.
Sometimes a cheaper one will do everything you need.
It's about finding the right balance between what it can do and how much it costs.
Exactly. And, you know, there's something else I think we should mention.
Okay. What's that?
How monitoring might affect your relationships.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Whether it's with your kid or your employees.
Yeah.
Bringing in that kind of surveillance could change things.
It could. How would you feel if you found out your parent or your boss was tracking everything you did online?
Right.
It wouldn't feel very good.
It would feel like a betrayal.
Yeah, totally.
So if you do choose to use monitoring software, you got to think about how you're going to handle it.
How are you going to talk about any concerns?
Right. How will you keep the lines of communication open? You got to think about this stuff beforehand.
Wait, before any damage is done.
Exactly. And that brings me to one final question.
Okay.
What are you comfortable with?
Yeah.
Are you okay seeing every text message, every phone call, every website?
That's a really good point. It's not just about what the software can do.
Right.
It's about what you want it to do. It's about respecting someone's freedom while still trying to protect them, and that's going to be different for everyone.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong answer for everybody.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this whole deep dive into XNSPY,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Monitoring software can be really powerful, but it doesn't replace open communication, trust, and healthy boundaries.
Yeah, technology can only do so much.
It's up to us to use it in a good way.
That's a great point. Thanks for joining us on this XNSPY journey.
My pleasure.
We hope this deep dive gave you the info you need to make good decisions about monitoring and all this complicated digital stuff.
Yeah, stay safe out there.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.